Before the number reaches 5 digits, money tends to feel unstable, almost abstract, as if it moves through your life without ever really staying. You earn, you spend, something unexpected happens, and the cycle repeats with a quiet sense that you are always reacting rather than choosing. There is a subtle tension behind everyday decisions, even small ones, because each expense is connected to a limited buffer that can disappear quickly. Then, at some point, that number changes. Not dramatically in appearance, but meaningfully in structure. When your savings reach $10,000, something shifts, not externally at first, but internally, in how you perceive risk, time, and control. This shift is not about wealth in the traditional sense, because $10,000 does not make someone financially independent, nor does it eliminate the need to work or earn. What it does instead is create distance from immediate financial pressure. That distance is where the change begins. Before this threshold, most financial decisions are shaped by urgency. After it, they begin to be shaped by intention. Psychologically, the presence of a financial buffer alters how the brain processes uncertainty. When savings are low, even minor disruptions, a car repair, a delayed paycheck, an unexpected bill can trigger disproportionate stress. This is not simply emotional, it is cognitive. Scarcity reduces bandwidth. It narrows attention, prioritizing short-term survival over long-term thinking. In that state, decisions are often reactive, optimized for immediacy rather than efficiency. Reaching $10,000 does not remove uncertainty, but it absorbs it. The same unexpected expense still exists, but it no longer threatens stability in the same way. This changes the emotional weight of decisions. You begin to evaluate options rather than avoid consequences. The difference is subtle but foundational. Instead of asking, "Can I survive this?" the question becomes, "What is the best way to handle this?" From a mathematical perspective, this threshold functions as a shock absorber. Consider that many common financial disruptions fall within a predictable range. Car repairs, medical deductibles, temporary income gaps. These are often measured in hundreds or a few $1,000s. When savings are near zero, any one of these events creates a deficit. When savings reach $10,000, multiple disruptions can occur without destabilizing the entire system. The volatility of your financial life decreases, even if your income has not changed at all. This reduction in volatility has second-order effects. When financial pressure decreases, time horizons expand. You are no longer forced to prioritize the immediate over the optimal. This is where better decisions begin to compound. You can wait for a better price instead of buying out of urgency. You can choose not to accept unfavorable terms because you are no longer dependent on immediate cash flow. You can think in weeks or months instead of days. There is also a behavioral shift that emerges quietly. When money is scarce, spending often carries emotional weight, either through guilt or justification. Purchases are either restricted or rationalized, rarely neutral. With a sufficient buffer, spending becomes more deliberate and less reactive. You begin to categorize decisions differently, not as allowed or forbidden, but as efficient or inefficient. This reframing is subtle, but it marks the transition from survival thinking to systems thinking. Historically, financial stability has always been tied to reserves. Whether in the form of stored grain, gold, or currency, the ability to absorb shocks has separated those who react from those who plan. The modern equivalent is not necessarily large wealth, but sufficient liquidity. The $10,000 threshold represents a point where liquidity begins to function as a system rather than a temporary state. This is also where identity begins to shift. Before reaching this point, it is common to see oneself as someone trying to get ahead, as if progress is always just out of reach. Afterward, there is a quiet transition toward maintenance and optimization. You are no longer starting from zero each time. You are building on something that persists. That persistence changes how you relate to money because it introduces continuity. Another important change occurs in risk perception. When savings are low, risk is often avoided entirely, even when it may be beneficial, because the downside is too costly. With a financial buffer, the same risk can be evaluated more objectively. This does not mean taking reckless actions, but it does allow for calculated decisions that were previously inaccessible. The presence of reserves transforms risk from something to avoid into something to assess. At the same time, there is a paradox. While $10,000 increases stability, it also introduces a new form of awareness. You become more conscious of how money flows because you now have something to protect. This awareness can lead to more disciplined behavior, but it can also create hesitation if not balanced properly. The key difference is that decisions are now made from a position of choice rather than constraint. From a systems perspective, the most significant change is not the amount itself, but the feedback loop it creates. Stability leads to better decisions. Better decisions preserve stability. Over time, this loop reinforces itself. The initial $10,000 acts as a foundation, not because it is large, but because it is sufficient to change the direction of the system. It is also worth noting that this threshold does not function identically for everyone. The impact depends on expenses, obligations, and context. For some, $10,000 may represent several months of expenses. For others, it may be a shorter buffer. However, the underlying principle remains consistent. When reserves reach a level that can absorb common disruptions, the nature of financial decision-making changes. What often goes unnoticed is how this shift affects non-financial areas of life. Reduced financial stress can improve focus, patience, and long-term planning in other domains. Decisions are no longer clouded by immediate pressure. This clarity can influence career choices, relationships, and personal goals, not because money solves these areas, but because it removes a layer of instability that previously shaped them. There is no dramatic moment when this change becomes visible. It does not announce itself. Instead, it appears gradually, in the absence of urgency, in the ability to pause before deciding, in the quiet realization that not every problem is a crisis. Over time, these small differences accumulate into a fundamentally different experience of money. In the end, saving $10,000 does not transform your financial reality overnight. What it does is alter the structure beneath it. It introduces stability where there was volatility, intention where there was reaction, and continuity where there was reset. And once that structure is in place, the way you think, decide, and act begins to follow it, often without you noticing, until you realize that everything feels just a little more controlled, a little more deliberate, and a little less fragile than before.